Well, this may not quite be a cartoon talk, but it's still something I value. You will find when I get into talks that I can start soft, but I'm a bit like a peanut in that way. I start soft, but if the heat comes, then I harden very quickly. That's because I don't just talk for the sake of talking, although that is valuable to an extent, but with purpose of progressing the conversation, to learn something, um, to share. Suppose my opinion is correct, give it to the other person, they develop their opinion, they bring their own quality, they come up with their own things that I wouldn't have come up with, they bring that back, we progress. So when I see a problem, I categorize it, I look at where it comes from, I reason with the problem itself. Sometimes certain opinions are expressed, especially on the cartoon sections, and they simply say this person needs help in a very specialized institution, surrounded by everyone who has ever loved them in all of their life. Because on one hand, people say things which are very logical, hence why you start the conversation. There's a hope there that this person is reasonable. And then they say other things which are disturbing, actually. You ask, how could a person think this? They've got functional mind, they've got a foundational understanding of the topic, so how could they go for this conclusion? A lot of contradictions in things people say. So I get worked up wanting to deal with the problem, because the solution to such things isn't to convince you of my current point. It's to deal with why you missed the point in the first place. So I end up going quite a bit. Now in this section we're talking guns. I've also had this conversation in the outskirts section. I just don't rate guns. It's simple. Well, I don't rate guns in the modern age. Yes, see. In the outskirts section, what I said to them was, give me a gun worth $1,000. Give me that same $1,000 and tell me to put together a sword. And then we'll performance test them, we'll even get into a fight, we'll see whose head gets chopped off. My thinking there is simple. A gun is far more expensive, and it has that big boom that kills all stealth. A sword is cheaper. Give me the same amount of money it costs to just buy the gun. Honestly, the fair argument is to, from scratch, make the gun from scratch. That's the fair argument. Because capitalism makes a huge difference. Mass production. Swords don't get mass produced anymore. So it's like the price of the gun has been reduced to 100th of what it really is in terms of production cost per individual weapon. So from that alone, the gun is not superior in my view. But even putting aside capitalism's input, which is really giving a huge advantage to the gun. Price for price, $1,000 worth of gun, $1,000 worth of sword. You know what I'm doing? A bullet isn't just gonna crush a sword into 1,000 pieces and go straight through me. No. I'm buying 10, 20 swords, tying a rope around them, and I'm using them as armor. And I'm buying yet another 5 swords, wrap them around my hips. Oh, not wrap, but tie them to my hips. 2 in my hands, and let's go. You shoot, swords on the body, deflect the bullet. By the time you fire a second shot, assuming a starting distance, let's say 20 meters, by the time you fire the second bullet, I'm close. I can start dodging because if I take one step to the left, that's like a 30-degree difference for you in your field of vision. Whereas when I'm 20 meters away, one step to the left is just 1 degree difference. Doesn't make much difference to your aiming. So suddenly I'm up close, I can start playing with the idea of dodging. But alright, you're still a good shot, you land another hit, sword blocks it. Let's say my swords are brittle, they just break to pieces. You're not getting a third hit in. Mind you, I can also throw the swords, but you're just not getting a third hit in. Your hit goes, same amount of money, gun loses a fight. That's just in the here and now, which is outrageously advantageous to the gun because of the mass production thing, lowering the price like mad. You then account for mass production. If swords were mass produced, you'd be buying swords for $1. I know because I bought a sword for $10 and it's the most solid piece of metal I've bought. It's lasted me about 10 years now. I've been a fanboy doing everything with it. Chopping wood, everything with it. It's solid. Bought? No, in fact it was $5 now that I remember. It was about $7 actually. Doing the multiplication and all of that. Exchange rates. $7. Solid piece of metal. So if the sword had mass production, you'd be getting one for 50 cents. A good solid sword that will last you half a lifetime. 50 cents you'd be getting one. If swords had mass productions like guns have mass production. A lot of swords are manufactured by hand. Blacksmiths. Granted, the reason for that is because they're basically action figures nowadays. No, even action figures have mass production. That's how bad it is. Oh well. The argument I'm going to bring with you guys is slightly different, but it still leans heavy on capitalism. It's the development argument. My goodness. This is a mad point. I cannot have it unacknowledged. As soon as folks start ignoring a point when it has already been made, that's when I start looking at them funny. This one isn't here to have a talk, this one isn't here to have an exchange. There's something else going on. The last 500 years of military and industrial development have gone completely to guns. Swords, spears, anything else has not had development in the last 500 years. Simple as. That's the first thing. 500 years. And since capitalism took over the way it did, that's basically all of society. Billions of people, every single day, the gun is a central figure in their lives, in their safety. And yet we've gotten here, where one suggests that a little hubris, a little arrogance, can suddenly turn things around in an exchange between a gun and a big knife. Guerrilla warfare. Vietnam War. I mean, if I told you, here are two things. One is the original. The other will have 500 years of development by practically every person alive, with all the resources and so on. 500 years. By the time you get to the 500th year, how much better should the developed version be? What amount of hubris would it take? I'm sorry, the guy would have to turn the weapon on himself to lose the fight. 500 years of development, to understand how mad that is. Just using natural materials, even back in the day before industrialization. Give me a piece of rope, and based on my knowledge of natural materials, I'm turning that rope within a matter of 5 years. 5 years. And by the way, I'm a weep. Full on proper weep. Well, I don't do that costume dressing thing. That's not me. I don't do that. But I'm a weep. I sit indoors 99% of the time. My neighbors don't even know that I'm around. They think this guy's wherever else in the world. When they see me, it's the biggest surprise. And that's not healthy, by the way. You need to get outside. Long story, but you need to get outside. It's a need, not a option. It's a need. Just like eating, sleeping, drinking water, you need to get outside. I've been trying to break out of my shell recently. I'm making some progress, but there's still some way to go. 99% indoors, playing games, watching anime, reading manga, all of that stuff. Oops. All of that stuff. But I know enough about natural materials that you give me a random rope, give me a shoelace, and in 5 years, that is gonna be this extraordinary materials that can lift a ton, just based off of natural materials. You then add industrialization, synthetic materials, lab experiments. My goodness, the madness I could do with a shoelace. Given 5 years. Guns have had 500 years of this. They basically put other weapons aside and they said, let's go. Guns, all the way. That is an outrageously mad advantage. No argument of hubris can cover when the one wielding guns, wielding proper guns like the Americans in the Vietnam War, lose. No, even if they struggle with those who have less military training, firstly, living in somewhat turbulent times for their society, less military training, far less. And then they're using, for the most part, they're using swords. They'll have their own guns, they'll have a few bombs, but for the most part, they're not using guns like the Americans were using guns. To even struggle in that scenario says that you've wasted your 500 years. They didn't struggle, they lost. What madness is that? Guy wants to say it's hubris. Their lives are on the line, and they're capitalists. So they're very serious about getting the job done. Because they win Vietnam, they have a foothold in Southeast Asia. It's a big thing for capitalism. Hubris would not have won the day. Capitalism has survived because when it comes to making money, they don't mess around. Even then, it's still a nonsense system, but they don't mess around. Now, in a war scenario, suddenly hubris got to them, they messed around. That seems mad to me. That seems mighty mad. Oh well, even if it was hubris, that means the gap is extremely small if the gun is ahead in the first place. It wasn't just the gun, it was the military training, it was the supplies. Americans were superior. Very important aspects of war. and yet they struggled as they did. Hubris is not enough to cover that. It has to be that at absolute minimum, the gun is not that much better than bladed weapons. It has to be. Or else we have to say it was a spiritual intervention from the heavens or something. Those are the three options, nothing else. And of those three options, the one that says it was hubris, I disqualify it. I discount it. I find it nonsensical. The other fellow, he says, and they still carry knives because sometimes you need to cut off someone's throat. No, you don't. These are not the days when you would kill an opponent and then take their stuff. Their weapons, if they've got potions or whatever, their potions. No, these are not those days. These days, you shoot the guy from a distance and you just keep going. If the knife is needed, that tells you gun is not so clean in this business. Now you could argue, well, the other side also uses guns. Let's say then that the guns cancel each other out. That means when a soldier has lost his gun and is up against other soldiers, enemy soldiers who are using guns because they didn't lose theirs, he lost the exchange. A knife makes a difference. The argument in favor of the gun, it's contradictory. On one hand, the gun is so much better. On the other hand, a knife makes a difference. Doesn't work. Oh well, to continue. Case is not over. You then get to the actual point. 500 years of development by all of society. And you know what? Bring in the missiles. I'm counting the missiles. It's firearms. I'm counting the missiles. I'm counting the grenades. I'm counting all of that stuff. Bring it in. That's 500 years of development, right? Okay. I told you what I can do with a basic shoelace. 5 years. Basic knowledge of natural materials. Even like right now, I know exactly, well, not exactly, but I know who I would go to. First stop. I know who I would go to. I know what I would say to them. I know the result I would get from that. And then I proceed further. I've never really researched string. I've researched, not even researched, I saw a video on how to make it. How to make your own string. That's all I know about it. But I know enough. Give me 5 years. Tell me to develop string. Give me some funding. I'm getting a job done like you won't believe. Because you seem to live in a bubble space of guns are the beginning and end of everything, and that's it. They're far from that. They're not even ahead of other weapons as a concept. Conceptually, even with modern guns and all their development, give me 2 daggers, give me a kukri knife. 1 kukri knife, and 1 sword, good and proper. I'm not even a fan of swords, by the way. I argue swords are not the big deal among classic weapons. I'm a fan of knives. I'm a fan of the staff. Not even the spear. Oh well. Give me a kukri knife, a big dagger, and a proper sword. What you can do with a gun during the day, modern gun by the way, I'm matching that with a knife at night. Because in order to kill a person with a knife, you don't have to go bang and announce your presence to everyone. That's a point. You can go in a camp at night with a knife. You can take out 100 people. You cannot. You can go in the same camp during the day. For some reason, the people are there with your gun, machine gun, rifle, whatever. You're not getting to 100 people because the first person you shoot, everyone's gonna hear you. They know what the sound is. They're taking cover. And then you're wasting half your bullets, shooting nothing. And the half that remain, 3/4 of those you shoot get injured. They don't die. Practical value in action, in application. You'd still have a debate, a situation to deal with if we were talking modern gun versus knife and sword. Modern knife and sword, which is basically classic knife and sword. Because no development for 500 years. The fact that there's something to talk about. Like, the advancements of the gun, I'm not sure I respect the lightsaber from Star Wars, but that's where we should be at. 500 years of development, that is where we should be at. It should be at a level where your imagination can't even consider the idea that this isn't the greatest weapon ever. But your imagination very much can, because your soldier is going to tell you you need a knife. Let's take the sword. My least favorite of the classic weapons. My goodness. Give me 500 years of development for the sword. We lost the Damascus steel, they tell me. I find that hard to believe, to be honest with you. But you know what? Let's say for once they're right. We don't even know the best methods. Give me 500 years of development with the sword by all of society, with mass production, with active wars to test it in action. I'm coming up with materials you cannot imagine. Combining this metal with that rubber, put it in the fire, mix it up. I'm coming up with materials you cannot imagine. I'll give you a sword, a great sword, they call it nowadays, or a broadsword, I suppose. That is as tall as a man, let's say, as the blade is 2 meters long. The width of it is the width of a man, let's say, half a meter. The sharpness is mad, obviously. The durability is outrageous. And then, it's as light as a normal short sword. That's the material compositions I'm talking about. And that's not fantasy, by the way. That's very realistic. Now, bring your machine gun when I've got that. It's basically a shield and a sword in one. I'm just walking straight at you. Your bullets are deflecting like nobody's business. Okay, you leave a few dents. Still, the weapon is still in good enough condition to chop your head off. Give me 500 years of development. Give me the mass production. Give me the field testing of a war on every continent all the time. The funding. The understanding of physics. The affinity with the fire. Billions of people, their lives revolve around the sword. Ideas are coming to people all the time. I mean, my goodness. People look at what the Indians did with the sword. There's that whip sword thing they developed. And they call them mad. No, buddy. That's what happens when you're the weapon of the day. People have ideas. People look at the Japanese. They say they were playing on some sort of a crazy mode. No, that's what happens when we are actually concerned with weapons and you have 100 years of basic development with those weapons. You come up with things. The Japanese, the Australians, the Asians, basically. You come up with things when you give a weapon a chance. Now here's the problem you got with the gun. Mind you, I'm just talking sword. I'm not even talking style of battle. Because in terms of style of battle, the full set, your gun is coming with that soft leather armor, Kevlar they call it. And it's basically clothing. You're wearing clothing along with your gun. You've got a helmet that's worth something in terms of against another weapon besides a gun. But besides the helmets, you're wearing clothing. That's the gun. With a sword, you've got your sword, you've got your armor, you've got your shield. 500 years of development, the armors I'm coming up with. You look at that Juggernaut character from X-Men. You look at Master Chief, you say, the weight of the armor, it must be outrageous. Bro, give me alien technology. I'm making that armor, durable as it is, no, 100 times more durable, but also weighing 100 times less. Give me 500 years of material development for metals. The madness that I'm coming up with. No gun is doing anything. Firstly, given the same advantages, the same commitments, the swordsman that I would develop with a sword, shield, and armor would walk through 1,000 of the Green Berets, the GSG-9s. I forgot what the Russians are called. MI5s, all of those guys. Walking through 1,000 of them, just walking through. Bullets are bouncing off, walk, slice. You bring your grenade. The armor and shield can actually deflect it. You have to be very stupid to get pushed back by a grenade while having an armor and shield. But alright, bring a grenade, it still doesn't kill. You'd have to bring a missile. And even then, it's the heat from the missile that would maybe fry the guy inside. Maybe. I don't think it would even. Bring a missile, it explodes in front of me, I just turn my back, I'm fully covered. No space for it to contact my skin. Maybe it's tossing me very far. Yeah, light armor, yeah, it's tossing me very far. And the concussive damage could be worth something. Even then, why not line my armor on the inside with a cushion? Something that'll absorb heavy impacts. 500 years of industrial development, my guy. That's a huge thing. I don't think you understand how big of an advantage that is. You bring a missile and I'm facing it. Then you could still add more. To face the missile itself, I'd have the equivalent of some giant sword that even anime wouldn't come up with. A sword that's like 100 yards long or something like that. It's carried by a team. The team swings it at once in formation, chops off an entire field. I'll grant you this. When it comes to mass destruction, firearms have an edge. Bombs and so on, they do the job easier. Simply making a handheld weapon bigger, it's not very efficient. I'll give you that one. But even then, here's the problem you've got. Everything is so strongly against the gun that if I grant you one thing, you still lose. If I grant you another thing, you still lose. The only way for the gun to get close to winning is if I granted everything that it claims and I just leave it there. I granted the 500 years, the mass production, the unlimited funding. You have to grant it all of that to be in the conversation. And even then, I've got an argument. You know what that argument is? In this conversation, the gun needs to have a higher output because, unlike the other weapons, realistically, the gun has a very limited output. You've got your machine gun. How many bullets you got in there? Let's say it's that one where you strap the bullets over your shoulder, Rambo style. 100 bullets, 200 bullets, I'll give you 200 bullets. After you shoot 200 bullets, most of which miss, get deflected and all of that, how much damage is done? Maybe you kill 100 people. That is the best you can hope for. You can take people in normal houses. You're not going past 100 people. And then your gun is basically a little bit of a stick in your hand. You can bash people with it, but it ends there. It's not even ergonomical in that way. On the other hand, give me my sword, the one I bought 10 years ago, cheap ass sword. Was it 10 years ago? Yeah, 10 years actually. Could be 10 years to the day. Cheap ass sword. Anime is the only reason I bought that sword. Just cause, hey, swords. Give me that. The amount of hits I can chop, I've been chopping wood with it. The amount of hits I can chop, 100,000. Chop water, chop water, chop water after the first 100. Rest the sword, put the oil in, rest it nicely. Next day, keep chopping. There's basically no ammunition limitation with handheld weapons. The sword, the gun, ammunition's a problem. So when you've got basically limited number of attacks you can do, what that does is it says you don't just need to be better in a one-on-one confrontation. You need to be so much better to justify the fact that you're not going to use this for long. It's basically the Mangekyo Sharingan. The problem is, with the Mangekyo's abilities, they're world-breaking. You've got a guy who can open his own dimensions. He's got basically an entire dimension's worth of storage, personal storage. And the dimension warps that he opens, they basically can't be killed by other magics. You throw a fireball at it, the fireball just goes to the other dimension. Mad hack ability. You've got a guy who can shoot a flame that just burns whatever. The flame doesn't just burn, mind you. It's not just an extremely hot flame, but it consumes what it touches, including the enemy's energy that controls whatever. You saw it in the fight, Sasuke and Itachi. Sasuke throws a fireball, a water ball even. The water ball is traveling from the air down to Itachi. Gravity. And yet, when it meets with a hand's-sized amount of the MS flames, it immediately stops in the air. All its energy, all its momentum, and it just gets consumed. Those are abilities where you can tell me the guy only has 5 minutes with it, and I can say, not bad. On paper, MS Sasuke can look at the sun itself and burn it to nothing. He can turn to the oceans, burn them to nothing. So tell me he's got 5 minutes, or let's say 100 shots with his eyes. I'll say, still not bad. It is a loss, but still not bad. Because what he can do in those 5 minutes, it's madness. He can basically destroy the world. You got Shisui's influence ability that can basically make a decision for you. You get this one powerful enemy, turn him into a puppet in an instant. What other one is there? Let me see. And you got the perception control that Itachi and his father had. With that as well, I did a post in the Naruto section, and there are details what Itachi can do with his abilities. Basically, he's a trainer for the ages. A dude can warp time in there. In a split second, he can basically train you to perfect whatever skill you've got. In a split second, he can train himself to that. Basically guarantees that everyone will reach their prime. Mad ability. So you tell me they've only got let's say 100 shots of that. I'll say it's still a very good ability. I do count the whole limited ammo thing, because in the world that we live in, can get jumped at any time. But when you can actually do something with those 100 shots, each shot is lethal, can wipe out a city, I'm satisfied. When I look at the gun, each shot is not even more lethal than a sword stab. A basic sword cut from an amateur is chopping off a limb. From a skilled person, chopping off a head. But the sword user has 10,000 chops in that sword. It's actually more than that. It's far more than that. But let's just say 10,000 chops. The gun user only has as many shots as they've got bullets. Now, somehow give them some personal storage that allows them to store infinite bullets. Yeah, they're doing a lot of damage. I acknowledge. But in the world we live in, they need to carry the bullets on their person. They're not carrying more than 200 bullets on their person. That Rambo Styles bullet strap thing they did. That is the problem you've got. When you've got such a big difference in how many shots you can take, how many strikes you can do, the strikes you do don't just have to be better. They have to be so much better that they justify running out in a matter of 2 minutes. Because you put the machine gun, you strap the bullets on yourself, you go full speed, full force. In under a minute, you're wasting all those bullets. You're using them in under a minute. So again, it's like you have to grant it the mass production. You have to grant it the funding. You have to grant it 500 years of development. And you must just overlook all these special advantages. And only then is the sword is the gun in the conversation of best weapon. And still it can be beat by others. Still it can be beat. It wins most of the time, but it can be beat. Vietnam happened. I read that in some African countries, back when they were still tribes, they beat the Europeans a number of times. Those are impossible stats when you've got the advantages that the gun has got of development, of society's commitment to the gun. Those should be utterly impossible. Telling me that war generals suddenly had hubris like no one's business. What madness is this? Those are impossible stats, and yet they happened. But the reason I call them impossible is because the gun is supposed to have such an advantage. The other fellow, that's what he presents. The gun is just crazy better than everything else. Certainly mainstream does the same. Problem is, he himself has to acknowledge we still need a knife. Problem is, not only is the gap smaller, it's actually in favor of the handheld weapons. Your swords and shields and all of them. The gap is in their favor, not the guns. The ammunition limit. The 500 years of development. The mass production. Those three are huge things. You cannot overlook them. And you know what? Just for the sake of it, I don't mind going into handheld weapons amongst themselves. Now, I do like ranged weapons. Fan of the bow and arrow. Still, bow and arrow, it does have... Now, the bow and arrow is respectable, actually, because here's what you can do. You make your bow and arrow, but the bow is made out of a material that is actually durable. In other words, something like a soft metal, which when it meets a sword, can deflect the sword. Maybe take a bit of a dent, deflect the sword, but a little dent isn't damaging the function of the bow. Deflect the sword, kick dust in the air, make distance, fire your shots. And then you run out of arrows, you take out a knife, you find some branches, some trees, you make more arrows. You can individually make more of your ammunition. And that for me halves the problem that the gun has. An individual is not making more of their weapons, of their bullets. With a bow and arrow, you can make more by yourself. And even the bow and arrow by itself is decently easy to make. The other day I almost made one. Again, 99% weeb here, but I can make my own bow and arrow. It's extremely easy. It won't be the world's best, it won't be anywhere near that, but it will be functional. If you're standing 100 yards from me, I'm shooting, I'm landing. Well, I might not land because I've never really practiced with one, but I'm a threat at 100 yards away. Among the ranged weapons, my favorite is the knife. You can throw knives about 50 yards and it will be an accurate throw. Now, to be fair with you, this claim comes from feats by people who can be considered specialists at throwing knives. To be fair. But still, personally, give me 10 knives, you see. I'm throwing them rotation style, which means there's a chance that when it lands on you, it'll be the butt of the knife that makes contact and not the blade. Let's say 2/3 of them, they basically are ineffective like this. Still 4 knives. 3 or 4 knives. Yeah, 4 knives. Coming with force and a very sharp blade that's going through Kevlar. It's silent, it's decently easy to throw. The thing you're throwing is cheap, and once the guy is dead, you go and take your weapons back. It's the knife. I would say the same for the shuriken. The chakram is inconvenient to throw. You can throw it, but you need an hour of training at least. Otherwise, I would be a big fan of the chakram. But you need an hour of training at least with someone who knows how to throw one properly. So I default to the shuriken. Hyper easy to throw. The other day, a random fellow sees me throwing shuriken in my yard. Comes across, says, "Hey, let me take a throw." This guy's not a weep, nowhere near it. He takes a throw, and it's accurate within a 1 meter radius. First time, probably the first time in his life he's done that. Grown up man. Shuriken, extremely easy to throw. Silent, has penetration, can add poison. Those are the proper ranged weapons for me. They're better than the bow and arrow. I mean, you can reuse your arrows, but it's not too often. It meets something hard, can snap in half. Give me 10 knives, give me 20 shurikens. I think I'm doing more damage. You get to the handheld weapons. Problem with the sword is when you're up against fodder, the sword is brilliant. It just sends heads flying. The distribution of the sword, the design, the shape, maybe 5 inches worth of a handle and 20 inches of the blade. That's like 80% lethality. Compare that to a spear, where it's like 10% of the thing is lethal, the rest is just for control. But that's the point, you see. When you're up against fodder who are not even on the same level as you, the 80% lethality of the sword is perfection. It's like the gun. You just shoot and they stand there panicking. Perfection. The gun makes doing a quick job the easiest thing. I don't think any weapon does a quick job as well as the gun does. But a quick job against fodder. When you're up against someone who's on your level, has similar training, using a similar weapon, suddenly it's weak. It's weak because 80% lethality, you're not landing on someone who knows what they're doing. (10 to 15% handle), that's 10%, 15% control. That's how much control you have over your weapon for its size. Switch it around, and with something like a mace, Morning Star, you've got 90% handle. That's 90% control. Go watch that fight between Jet Li and Donnie Yen. Donnie Yen using a spear. You'd think he'd just be waving the head of the spear around, keeping Jet Li at a distance. No. He's using the spear like a staff that just so happens to have a lethal head. That's the value of a handle. The control you've got over the weapon. And then, to make things worse, the more you clash with a sword, it chips and the edge becomes blunt, to the point where a hard swing, you can suddenly start tanking it with your arm, and you're not instantly losing your arm after many clashes. Turn that around to something like even a spear, a mace, a staff. Every clash, firstly, it's a hard material, doesn't chip much, but whatever chipping does happen makes no difference. It simply gives you more grip, if anything. It's easier to grip something that's a bit rough than something that's smooth. It doesn't lose its prime value with each clash. Yes, see. You get in close combat with a sword. One guy has a basic stick, the other one has a sword. Okay, a proper stick, durable and all of that. After 100 clashes, smacking weapons against each other, the sword is effectively blunt. It's turned into a very light mace, but you can only control it using 10% of its body, the handle. A staff, on the other hand, you still got 100% of the body that you can use to control it, and whatever edges it's got, when it makes impact with body, it tears that much better. So, among handheld weapons, I'm not a fan of the sword. Turn it around, go with a knife. You're not winning very much. The range limit of a knife, it's lethal against you. But when it comes to that special scenario, breaking into a camp in the middle of the night, then it's king. Because you can walk right past someone, they don't even know you've got knives on you. Take out your 2 knives, going through 100 people, the short range becomes great control over the weapon. In that one scenario, the knife is king. But otherwise, it's not really in the conversation. Then you get to the mace. I place the mace ahead of the spear for one reason. The spear obviously is more lethal, but the lethal part is a blade. If it clashes with anything, it chips, it becomes blunt. And because it's a blade, and you know it's a blade, psychologically, you're not going to do what Donnie Yen did with it. You're not going to use it like a staff that just so happens to have a sharp end. No. You're going to use it like a very long sword, holding the back of it and swinging the head around. That's the natural instinct with the spear, because if you play staff with it and you mess up, your hand is getting chopped off. The range advantage that a spear has can easily become a disadvantage because of this. Because you find anything besides an open field, which is not what I would use in warfare. I would go Vietnam, guerrilla warfare all day long. Suddenly a long, heavy weapon is not very advantageous. On the other hand, you switch to a mace. You could make it a spiked mace, Morningstar type of thing. But you go with a mace anyways. It's more about the weight on the end of it. It's blunt, so you can play staff with it, knowing that if by mistake you handle the head itself, your hand is not getting chopped off. Then secondly, it's very easy to strike. You don't need much technique with the mace. The technique you need is to bring it back around. But again, 90% of the body can be used to control it. This is not difficult. So the usability of a mace. And on the other hand, when you do make contact, firstly, against soft armor or something like that, the mace is doing as much damage as any spear or sword. It's going through the soft armor, going through the Kevlar, breaking bones. And what that means is anywhere the mace hits, it's an effective hit. If it hits the legs, it's breaking a leg. That's huge damage in a standing fight. If it hits an arm, lots of pain, paralyzing the muscle with the impact. If it hits anywhere on the body, it's rupturing organs, it's breaking bones. It's a weapon where there really aren't any safe zones for you to get hit, because it transfers the weight. That's the problem. It transfers the force of the weight of the thing. On the other hand, with your sword or spear, you get training in biology. You know that some parts of the body are less important than others. It's horrible, by the way, horrible. But some parts are less valuable than others. If you get stabbed, oops, All right. Go transfer. All right. Ndibana noma ngancameleza. Ucela ukuchajiselwa apha. Ncameleza.
Akakunikanga i-charge.
Darn it, I got disturbed there. Well, getting back to the mace. 90% control. Any part it hits, lethal. Go with its counterpart, the spear. More like 50% control, because you're instinctively afraid of handling the head. 50% control, and especially as a piercing weapon, piercing is the one type of damage where it will go through the most, but you can negotiate with it by essentially giving a piece of flesh in order to survive. Because if let's say I knew my biology, I don't really, but I know there's such a thing as an appendix and people take it out at some point in time. That means there's a body part which is not fundamentally necessary. I'm sure it does a job. Nothing is useless. It probably does a job, but people can live without it. We at least know that much. If the guy is coming near my torso area, if I can negotiate with it, I'm giving him my appendix and using whatever I've got to land a lethal hit. A mace, you strike the appendix with a mace, the force is going through, the spine is in danger, the kidneys, the liver, they're in danger. That's the problem with the blunt weapon thing. Anywhere you strike, if that part itself isn't like a big deal, then whatever comes after it or around it, that's getting damaged. Honestly, you can strike someone's ass with a mace. You're breaking bone. Striking from the rear, you're breaking bone. Because the force that you're gonna bring through. That's the problem. With a spear, someone goes near the shoulder. If I'm using my right hand to hold my weapon, they're taking my left shoulder, I'm giving them my shoulder. I'm giving them my shoulder and I'm chopping off their head. The sharp weapons lethality, it's two-sided, because it comes from their small penetration area. That's what allows them to penetrate. They concentrate the force on a very small zone and they break through. It's clever in this way. But at the same time, small zone means that if there's any body part that I can live without, then when my life is on the line and it's a battle to the death, I can give away that body part and land something lethal. And with a mace, you don't even need to aim. Just strike anyway. You're almost certainly breaking bone. Then you make it a morning star. And you're tearing veins and all of that. So for me, a mace stands ahead of your sword, your spear. What about the funky weapons? The scythe, that wavy sword the Indians came up with. The funky weapon problem is not having a stronger standard form means that the tactical utility is reduced. It becomes a specialized weapon. Let's say the guy is hiding behind a tree and my sword is not going through that. With that wavy sword the Indians made, I'm slapping the sword to the side of the tree and it's going to wrap around, chop the guy's head off, or at least cut veins or something. It becomes a specialized weapon. In certain scenarios, the best thing you can ask for. In most other scenarios, not as good as something that's more normal, like your sword, your spear, your mace. The staff, I like it if you are an absolute master, because a weapon that is 100% control, if you master that, you're never losing to anyone under any circumstances. You're just not. You need a machine gun to beat you, actually. Something that's 100% control, 100% dexterity. And with the vulnerabilities of the human body, despite supposedly lacking lethality, there are still zones you can hit. Hit a person on the head, you're getting a concussion. Hit a person on the neck, you're threatening the spine. Hit a person on the toes, hit a person on the knees. There are still zones you can hit and deal proper damage with the staff, but you need to be very skilled with it. So I like it as a peak weapon. When you've perfected your weapon, the staff is probably king. But for a normal person, even for a soldier with some training, the lethality that a mace or a sword, a spear offers, well, it beats the sword because the sword has such poor control. Only 10% of the body is the handle which you can use to control it. So it beats the sword. But spear and mace probably beat the staff comfortably at that. The knife, the dagger, it's worth talking about, but it's not your starting weapon. If you're left with a dagger or a knife, you absolutely 100% have to go stealth mode. You have to. That's considering it as a close range weapon. Overall, combining with the fact that you can also throw it, it's not bad. Might be as good as a mace, combining with the fact that you can throw it. And the throws are fast. They're accurate 50 yards away. I mean, those are specialists. But at the same time, they're modern people living modern lives. They're not professionals. They're not making money out of knife throwing. At least not proper money. So all in all, I think a soldier, given 5 years of training, throwing knives, catches up to them very quickly. Yeah, a soldier with 5 years of training throwing knives can throw just as good as them. So you got a sharp weapon that's accurate from 50 yards away. That's very good in my opinion. And then after you land your hit, silently, mind you, after you land your hit, you go, you get your knife back, clean it up, you throw again. That's not bad. With that, For that, I say it's a decent weapon. The combination of its stealth value, where it's absolute king, and the throwing value, where it's quite good, decent at least. Overall, I'd say it's about equal to the mace, maybe slightly better, maybe slightly worse. Your favorite gun? No. Your gun is not in this, it's not really in the conversation. The advantages you need in order for it to start doing things where you can say, it looks better than other weapons, it's crazy madness. And even then, you run out of ammo very quickly. I struggle to respect the gun. Give it those advantages, which in all fairness, it's very close to having. It has had the 500 years development, it has had mass production, it has training courses so easily available. It's been given those advantages. So in a real life scenario, all this I'm saying, it's conceptual stuff. I'm looking at the concept of the weapon, and that's where the gun loses heart. But the version of it that we have in real life, it does have those advantages. It's been given the 500 years, the mass production, the funding, the ammunition. It's been given those things. So in terms of what's on the table for you to work with, it's not a bad weapon. It's not a bad weapon at all. It's just that the other weapons can still compete. Despite lacking the 500 years, the mass production and all of that, the other weapons are still relevant in warfare, firstly. Then, conceptually, so the first point says this gap that we've been told about between the gun and other weapons doesn't exist. The modern gun is better than the other modern weapons, but it's not a gap. The other weapons are still relevant in battle. And then, of course, you go to the concept, give the other weapons 500 years of development. My goodness, the mace I could make. Take some super light metal, mix it up with whatever concoctions I can come up with, make it super light but super durable. I'm making a mace the size of a ship, and I'm just coming through and I'm wrecking a house with it. You're telling me that if something like a mace had 500 years of development, you don't think people could wreck houses with them? I'm very interested to hear your answer on this one. It'll tell me what I'm dealing with. But yeah, that's the gun. That's my case against the gun. If it wasn't clear yet, when I make a point, I like to make it good and proper. Settle the problem from start to finish. Bruvva out.